Crystal,
Hello.
hello. Let me kiss the screen. How happy I am to see you. How happy I am
Yeah,
that you accepted our invitation and became the part of our event. And
thanks very
you
much.
are the last key speaker. You are
Oh,
going
really?
to wrap the event. You're going to be, there's a Russian saying, it's not a saying, it's from a movie, that people memorize and have the best memories of something that happens at the end. So
Okay.
you have been saved for the last, and
Yeah.
I just want to announce the theme of your report, and then please introduce yourself a little bit more. The theme is the age mixing and free choice model of education. How do these schools look like, and what kind of spaces is needed to support this model of education? And after your report, I will tell everybody something that we think may happen in the near future.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here, and I'm really happy to contribute. I will talk about a little bit about sub-re schools and spaces for self-directed education within these schools. I will see how I can actually work with this PowerPoint. Oh yeah, fine. This is the first time I do this online, so that's also a little bit new for me. I will talk in a small moment about how do these spaces in traditional educational systems look like, because we are so used to schools and education from a historic perspective that in order to understand how sub-re model school, we really need to think differently about the educational paradigm. We have to change our vision on how education could look like in another way as well. And then I will dive into a little bit of theory behind how humans are having this inborn capacity of learning, and where is that coming from, and what kind of theories support this self-directed education, and how is that put into practice in a sub-re model school, and what is the implication for this type of education in the spaces, not only within these schools, but also in general, how students learn. How do they learn in these schools? So thinking about education and schools, we are so used to mainstream schools anywhere in the world because they are based on a historically grown tradition. The characteristics of this system are that learning happens in prescribed places, in age groups, by a roster where the teacher actually transfers the knowledge, and where the classrooms are separated from other classrooms and also from the outside world, and where students have no voice and no choice, where the whole organization is a very hierarchical organization. And obviously, whether that was in very ancient times or now, the spaces actually look similar everywhere in the world when you come in these schools. But today we are actually in a transition time. We know that we have to change, and you see this in countries. Countries are looking for different ways to teach children. The old side, the teacher-centered transmission, doesn't really function anymore. Students become demotivated, and we are looking for different ways and options to teach the children. And the new style of thinking is already a more personalized education, looking for a collaboration-oriented creation of knowledge together rather than having the transferal of knowledge from a top-down structure. And we move actually from a more formal education into a more informal learning, where the formal learning was characterized by structured, sequential, supply-driven learning from a preset curriculum in which the learning is the responsibility of the teacher. And we move to a more informal learning spaces, which is actually characterized by random demand-driven learning with a personalized curriculum in which learning is the responsibility of the learner, in which the emphasis shifts from what to learn to how to learn. Learning, if you look at it, it is an inborn capacity. Learning happens everywhere, in any situation. And even here, when I'm talking, you all may be learning and you don't even notice it. And you probably are listening because you're intrinsically motivated, because you really are interested maybe in the things that I talk about. I hope so. Because autonomous motivation is the best driver for learning. Optimal conditions for autonomy are created in a surrounding in which personal goals and choices are respected. And autonomous motivation can thrive when supported in an autonomy supportive context. The learning theories that are relevant in this type of education, when I speak about Sudbury schools or Sudbury model education, are based on social constructivism, where the emphasis is laid on learning in a genuine and social context. It's based on the evolutionary developmental psychology, where it's actually said that humans are learning mechanisms and it's evolutionary determined. Children are hardwired to learn, and they learn especially through play and exploration, through observation and imitation, trying out things, through talking with each other, having conversations and discussions, and listening to stories. And their cognitive immaturity serves their learning, is what Björklund says. And actually Björklund warns us for not rushing children through their childhood. It's also based on self-determination theory by Daisy and Ryan, which already I mentioned. The support for intrinsic motivation is actually supported by the basic needs for autonomy, for competence, and for relatedness. And this is inherent in every person in the world. And it's also based on the theory of situated learning by Laaf and Wenger, where they stress that the learning context is defined by the voluntary participation into a caring and social environment, a community of practice, and by a free interaction between people of different ages in that environment. So, I need my button, yeah. How is the educational philosophy of a Sudbury school defined? It is said that the social need to connect to other people, the need to lead a meaningful life, and the notion that humans are naturally motivated to learn are the basic ideas under a Sudbury model school. And Sudbury model schools are built on the idea that social connection, interactive environments, and equality in the community is a breeding ground for natural learning and self-development. And it needs a genuine context. Doing is the objective, not learning. In these contexts, the school is real. It sets the boundaries for exploration, for all kinds of activities, playing, talking, exploration of things, doing things, observing things, carrying out tasks. And that's the way people learn from each other, not by teachers or adults who are in the neighborhood, but especially from other children who are older and younger, because they are showing what you need to know and what their competences are already in life and what you really would desire to learn. So what are the characteristics of a Sudbury model school? At first, a free age mix, different spaces for different purposes. There's ample time for social interaction and your own chosen activities. There's equality in the organization. There's not a formal hierarchy where adults have more to say than the children themselves. And adults are a role model in these circumstances. Participation in these environments is that you have a say in your own living and learning environment, and where the democracy is a direct democracy, an organization in the school in which you can participate. It forms a mini society, and the order is maintained together in a judicial committee. And this creates a space for autonomous free choices. Education is the responsibility of the individual. Development is an individual process. It gives an unlimited space for play, discovery, and following your own interests. It creates an unlimited space for play with the tools of the culture. It creates an unlimited space for immersion in a stable and supportive and respectful community. And it creates an unlimited space for access to a variety of caring adults that are helpers and not judges. Though I must say that the help is not, you really need to ask for help. The adults are not there to tell you what to do all the time. How do these spaces look like? Well, if we take a look at the outside spaces, there are, the schools are usually having campus areas, sometimes very large campus areas, where children can play outside, where they can go outside at any moment that they desire. They can go out for physical activities, playing games, but they can also go out for any leisure activities. If they want to sit and have a chat, or if they want to walk around, or if they just want some fresh air. There's nothing that stops children from going outside any moment during a day. If we look at the inside spaces, you will see a lot of different types of spaces where children can do all sorts of activities. And these spaces, they develop during the period of time that children are around. So whenever children are starting to create a certain interest, a space can be changed due to the interest children develop. But what you generally see is that there are kitchens where you can cook, there are places where you can have creative activities, there are spaces where you can sit and have a chat and have conversations, there are spaces where you can also retreat and sit and do things for yourself. And even if you want to do nothing, that is also okay in these schools, because doing nothing means that you are doing things in your head and thinking about your life and what you really want to desire, what to do. So there are online spaces, of course, because children play with the tools of the culture, such as Peter Gray already mentioned or wrote down. Children play with computers all the time, or with other devices, online devices, and this brings the outside world inside. And they're very, very important as well in the whole learning of children, in becoming competent in all sorts of things. For example, language, which in the Netherlands we don't speak English as a first language, but young children learn English because of the online spaces that they enter. And then there are democratic spaces, of course, in these schools, because you're part of this community and you have a voice, an equal voice in the whole organization of the schools. Those schools show the spaces where you can participate. So there is a school meeting, usually every week, once a week. Every day there are smaller committee gatherings, like the judicial committee, which is actually gathering every day in the morning, or other committees, for example, for PR, for finances, for doing other things. And then there are also small groups, teams, or small corporations that, for example, come together for activities like creativity, for sports, for doing all sorts of interesting things together. And those spaces, they're all democratically organized. And so everybody has a voice in the organization, the whole organization of the school, of your own surrounding. And the whole school actually forms a space for age mixing. Everywhere in the school, every person has, it's open for every person. So age mixing is the most important tool for learning in the school. And you see age mixing everywhere. There's no space that is deliberately designed for a smaller group or a class or a smaller amount of children. Anybody can enter any room unless there is an activity busy, and you're not allowed to disturb the activities, of course. So in principle, the age mixing is the means for learning in these schools. And what do these schools deliver? If we look at outcomes, we don't know very much about it. There are a few studies that are presented on the internet. And one of them was an official article by Peter Gray and David Chenoff. And another one is a book by the Sudbury Valley School about the pursuit of happiness of their former students. And another study that we know of is done by the Circle School on their alumni population. But what we see is that, well, students go into society. They are accepted at colleges and universities. They have jobs. So one way or another, they develop to the standards of our society. But more importantly, I think we have to speak about the development of self-trust, self-confidence of these students. The strong sense of responsibility, not only for themselves, but also for their communities and also for the care of others. The development of a strong motivation, which really sets them apart. And I've seen examples of students that were hired for jobs or went to higher education purely on basis of their motivation. And also, when they follow courses or traditional classes, I've seen that they are engaged. They don't do it because they want to pass tests. They do it because they want to know and understand. They develop flexibility, creativity, and critical thinking skills. And especially they're very good at working and talking together with people of different ages on an equal level. And their talent to find the resources they need in order to develop themselves is another quite interesting development. So, talking about Sudbury schools, these schools need quite a lot of trust from us as parents and as adults, trust from society, and trust from authorities, because these schools can't be assessed on the basis of test results. These schools show their value by supporting students to develop themselves into in finding the right circumstances for young people to be able to shape their own education, to work on basis of their own motivation, and to find a way to develop into a full participating member in society. So this is a little bit of an idea behind these schools. You can find more on websites. Sorry for it, but our website is in Dutch, so I put the main website of the Sudbury Valley School below it as well. More information about the democratic community you can find on the UDIC.
Technology can help us here too, because Google can translate any site from any language. So thank you very, very much. We have a question from our first year student. He asks you, hi, do you think that a large number of choices or options can lead to the fact that the students cannot decide on what to choose?
I don't think so, because life is about options, and whenever you're adults, there's also nobody that tells you what to do, what kind of direction you should choose, and many people face the same options that are, well, in fact, very large, and then still, I think it's better to be able to already start learning how to follow your own choices, what you really want to do, what your desires are, and how to accept consequences that may also come with these choices. For example, if you really want to become, to study medicine, for example, you really need perhaps to do some exams in order to be able to go to university. And if you really desire and deeply want to become a physician, you have to accept that you have to do these exams and that you really have to work hard to come there. And there are many other consequences in life that come with the choices that you make. But the children in our schools, they are used to make choices, see the consequences and accept these consequences, because it is their responsibility. They feel that it is their responsibility.
Thank you very much. You know, maybe our students and guests some of them have been listening to you and thinking, why are we talking about education, about this kind of schools, about free choice in education at the end of this conference? But I told you that I would explain it later. So there are two main points. The first point is that the Netherlands is the home of the first bourgeois revolution. So a revolutionary way of doing things is a part of the Netherlands brand. That includes education as well, because your ideas are also revolutionary, even for your country, I mean, even for your country. And then the way you organize spaces is also, I think, part of your brand, of the brand of your country. Even when I was going to the Netherlands, before our trip last autumn, my son told me, he had never been to the Netherlands. He told me, Mom, this country is for people. Everything there is for people. He knew about that from the internet. So it also is about branding, of course, but this is just the first reason. The second reason is that Kристель is the author of one of the chapters of the book that we presented in Russian yesterday. John Moravec was online. He was the first in line to report at our conference, and we had a presentation of the Russian edition of the book. We had wonderful chat. We talked about you a little bit, and I told him that during our visiting you, we talked about our future possible ways of collaboration, maybe, and we came back here to Russia with Irina, and we are still sticking to the idea to organize the next web conference and focus the theme of this conference, of the next conference, around education, new ways of education, promoting education, branding, maybe education, new technologies in education. So everything that can be connected with education in the digital age. And we discussed it with you when we were kindly invited to your home during our visiting. So we want you to promise that you are going to participate first, that you're going to be part of this next project, and that maybe during these 2 years, we will find some other ways to do things or to do something, some projects.
Yeah, thanks very much. That will be very, very interesting. And what you're talking about, I think it is right. At this moment, there is a woman here in the Netherlands, Jolanda Eigenstein, and she is working on this idea that the Netherlands can be a kind of breeding ground for new ideas around education to fasten up the transformation in education as well. And she also talks about the Dutch DNA. That is her idea, that in the Dutch DNA there is this creativity, openness, tolerance, things like that, and that we actually need to try to use our Dutch DNA a little bit more to develop a new paradigm of education, because I think we are really needing it. We need to transform education into a much more personalized direction, that the person itself becomes the focus of development and not the curriculum. And how do we transform from the curriculum to the personal development, and how can we be sure that we develop surroundings, school surroundings, in which we can promote the personal development that is needed for our technological era that we are living in. And I think we can, and that Sudbury schools may be just a good example to look at how a school can look totally different, and how this school is organized in a total different way, to learn from, not to see it as a model, as an ideal model for everybody in the world, but to look at it and learn from it, and look at how we can develop perhaps other spaces for education. Yeah, thank you.
So we will try to find new people. We will try to make as many people as possible to participate, to be part of this network, probably. And I have just one more question. How is my favorite dog doing?
Oh, he is so fine. He is very fine. Yeah.
Say hello to him. The picture with him is very popular on my Facebook page. Yes, it's a decoration of my Facebook page. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just a moment. No. That was my last question, but we have a question from a student.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Anna, and you talked about outside spaces for education. And the question is, do you think, is it possible to have outside spaces in Russia, especially in Siberia? Because I think that the weather conditions is not so suitable. And what do you think?
I think children still go outside, and when also maybe in Siberia, but I haven't been there, and during the winter time it will be hard probably. So I think you really should look for more inside spaces where students can also have physical activities, you know, and I know that schools have those spaces as well. So it's not only the outside spaces, but what I want to show is that children are not demanded by any boundary or physical separation or recess times to go wherever they want to go. So if they want to go outside, and even in Siberia when it's very cold, yeah, they can, and they will learn that maybe it's too cold, and then you go inside again. But it's also a matter of how your own environment is and how you deal with the environment.
It's just in winter you will have to learn really fast. That's
Yes.
the difference. Or learn certain things like make figures out of snow or out of ice. That could be also, yes, useful. Crystal, one more time, thank you very much. Thank you for your
Okay.
participation, and I will send you the links with your video reports and all possible links with your performance today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.